Recording, and we'll get started. So welcome everyone, and thank you for attending. We know that your week's probably been busy with school starting and everything, and we're excited to be part of that and to welcome you all today and to see your faces again and to have some semblance of meeting back together again and being joined together in at least a meeting if we don't see each other at school, right? Today we have a conversation about rubrics and a more effective way to communicate with students. We are grateful for Isabel and all of her work in setting this meeting up. We have two special guests today. Lisa Shaning is the Dean of Academic Development here at FIDM. I'm assuming most of you know her. If you haven't met Lisa yet, then you should know that she is very generous with her time and her emails and very open to helping us all with all of the things that we do. So I've been really grateful to her. Every time I talk to her, I learn something. And so she's helped me improve my rubrics, and she'll help all of us improve our rubrics or any of that kind of thing. So if there's anything after the meeting or during the meeting that doesn't get addressed, feel free to contact her. Or Cheryl Bensmiller, who is someone that we all know and love because she also is very generous with her time. She's always there for us when we have a problem with our anything. It seems like all of our technological stuff and our Canvas. So in addition to being the director of e-learning, we call her the Canvas Whisperer, and she will help you manipulate Canvas in the way that you want to, or she'll let you know that it doesn't work that way. There's times when Canvas was designed by somebody at another school, and it's she'll help you though with workarounds, and she also has the ability sometimes to write to the people at Canvas. I've seen her even extend herself that far to have them help us program things in that we need. So that's amazing, Cheryl, and thank you for that and for being here today to help us sort all of this out. One more time, if you haven't put your full name in, then please type your first name and your last name by going to the three-dot menu under your face, or at the top right-hand corner of my face, I see it. Type your first and your last name so we can make sure you get paid for the meeting. Use the chat Q&A either to talk to each other, to talk amongst yourselves, to talk with us. We'll be following all of that along. And yeah, I think I'm gonna just let Lisa start the meeting. She's got a good, the way we set it up is that we would have Lisa speak about building rubrics in terms of theory and what should be in rubrics and sort of the language that we should use and all of those kind of things. And then we have Cheryl here to help us build rubrics, to teach us how to make them happen actually with the electronic devices and Canvas that we have. And then at the end, I'll go over, I'll take an actual rubric and talk a little bit about how I use them for grading. And we can then open up a dialogue and all of you can talk about how you use them for grading or ask any questions at that time. Are there any questions now that we need to go over before we start? Great. Lisa, if you're ready, go ahead.
I will go ahead. And Blaine, Isabel, if you guys could kind of keep an eye on the participant list. I've just admitted a couple of more people. I wouldn't want anyone to, miss anything as we're all speaking. Anyways, welcome everybody. And I know I sometimes get a reputation as the rubric police, which I'm very much trying to avoid doing, but I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about rubrics from the standpoint of how to work with rubrics more effectively and why to work with rubrics more effectively, and how to do some development on your rubrics so that you can take them from grade sheets into rubrics, because as Blaine said, they really are much better for communicating than standard grade sheets. As I said, what you want to do with your rubrics is look at them as a communications tool. They are a good way of communicating what your standards are to the students, as we'll see in a few minutes, beyond just what's expected of them to get an A but you're kind of laying out what's expected of them, how they can gain points, where they lose points. Gives them a little bit more detail, which can be helpful for them. One of the things that we also find with rubrics when they're done well, or at least done in some detail, is they help make the grading a little bit more consistent across the class. But not only that, but across multiple sections and different faculty. You know, if you are the only person who teaches your class, the rubric can be super helpful, keep you on track when you're grading. If you are one of 2 or 3 or 4 people teaching a class, working together to agree on the standards for the rubric can help make sure that everybody's grading is relatively consistent, and that you don't get students going instructor shopping to find out who's easier or what have you. The other piece that we're seeing with the rubrics is that they really help us make sure that the students have kind of a baseline skill set and that they are ready to move from one part of the curriculum to the next. So if you are teaching pattern 1 and everybody has an idea of what the end of quarter pattern 1 skills are, the students will be at least a little bit better prepared to go in for pattern 2 and to go from pattern 2 to pattern 3, for example. They're still going to tell you they haven't learned anything, obviously, but you will know that that is not actually true. So let's take a look. One of the things that when I first started working here and had to kind of make the shift around was working with grade sheets and then making the shift from the grade sheet to the rubric. I remember the first time, you know, I sat down to grade a homework assignment. It was like, oh my God, they did all the things. I have to give them an A. And we often find, even now when I'm looking at grade sheets as part of the assessment process, grade sheets are great because they break out all of the different elements of the project. But if there's language about the quality of the work, it tends to be geared toward the best quality work. In that way, rubrics work a little bit differently. All of the elements are broken out. The elements on your grade sheet are going to be the same as the elements on the criteria. Where they really differ is in that qualitative judgment area, because instead of just saying that this has to be beautifully done, or the line has to be done a certain way, or the seam has to be sewn a certain way, or the sources all need to be excellent. Here you are showing not just the A quality work, but you're breaking it down for them. What's a B? What's a C? What's a D? What's not meeting the standard at all and failing at least that element of the project. So I have borrowed some of Blaine's work for this. This is actually a rubric that he uses in the sketching class that he teaches for the interior design department. So all of the language that I'm using here is actually pulled from Blaine's rubric. Blaine, it's an excellent rubric, like I said. So Blaine actually sent me a rubric and I was able to modify it into being a grade sheet pretty easily. Okay, we've got design and layout, we've got perspective and proportion, we've got freehand line quality, we've got the details of material and texture, we've got the use of color marker and value application, and all of these elements that he expects to see when he's graded the work. But if you take a look, industry standard for professional work should be pretty clear. But when I get to a question like well laid out, is that necessarily clear? The student gets an A, gets full points for the floor plan being well laid out. What are the steps down from laying out that floor plan well? If the various architectural and furniture proportions are properly displayed, what does it look like when that's not done? So this is an excellent grade sheet. It's very clear, it's very thorough, but what it doesn't tell you is where the points get lost. And that's where taking your grade sheets or taking your very basic rubric into a more detailed rubric can be super helpful. So for example, here we go. Here we see, in the interest of being able to read it, design and layout, perspective and proportion. Okay. Here we've got design and layout, floor plan showing all of the required elements. Here we've got perspective and proportion, representation of depth and scale. And here we've got these ratings, which would be where you would assign the points. One of the things, though, that we are starting to see as being really useful in the rubric is not just a description of the criterion, as you've got here, but the addition of the PLOs and the SLOs. In this case, for these two rubric criteria, I've reproduced the student learning outcomes and the program learning outcomes for this class. So design and
Is it possible? We have a question in the chat if we can make the make it larger.
Sure. How's that?
That helps with readability. Thank you.
Yeah, it's more things than there is.
If you make it as a slideshow, we won't see the side menu and it'll be full at the bottom where you made it bigger. There's a little slide.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Sorry. I'm used to doing that in in live presentations, but not as much on screen like this. So in any case, adding your PLOs and your SLOs can help can draw the student's attention back to those things. It can also help when you're doing a review of the class, seeing how everybody's done, making sure you are still hitting all of the SLOs and making sure those SLOs track up to the program PLOs. In this case, design and layout tracks to, as you can see, SLO1 at the top here and PLO1, articulating design solutions in a professional way. Okay, so you've got the criteria. You are going to add in the SLOs and PLOs, and then go ahead and add descriptions of the ratings. It gives the student a lot more information. Again, it keeps you a little bit more consistent when you're grading. And if you do post your rubrics prior to grading the actual work, it can give the students an idea of where they should start when they're planning out the work. So take a look. Okay, so this goes into quite a lot of detail. As I said, this is Blaine's rubric, but I want to address your attention to how the language is set up and how it allows the student to see where the points get lost in a particular area. So as an example, drawing meets industry standards for professional work. Floor plan is well laid out and functional. The step down from that into the B range for the work, or 80 to 89%, the drawing shows adequate knowledge of industry standards. Floor plan is original and functionality is considered. Just as a tip, what I usually try to do when I'm writing my rubrics is take this term met expectations very literally, and I set my expectations for the work at this level. That gives you room to recognize better quality work and assign an A to the work that really goes above and beyond. Perhaps there's that combination of the work being both original and beautifully executed, or the problem solving, coming up with a solution that perhaps you hadn't anticipated, as well as the work being well done. If you set all of your expectations at B, that at 80 to 89%, that gives you an opportunity to go a little bit further. Equally, you want to make it very clear what's going to be the difference between work in the 80 to 89% range, work that meets expectations, and work that mostly gets there, but not quite. Work in that 70 to 79% or C range. Here you can see that the language steps down again. Drawing shows minimal knowledge of industry standards of professional work. Floor plan is not functional or is not fully depicted. The objects vary in size and placement from the floor plan. Once you get down to the 60% or 60 to 69% is actually what that should say. Probably, oops, sorry, hang on. Drawing shows only a small amount of knowledge of industry standards of professional work. Floor plan is not functional or fully developed, and so on. You'll see language across this. The work is adequate. The work demonstrates a minimal understanding. The work demonstrates insufficient understanding. The work is inaccurate. Work is inaccurate at times. The work is fairly accurate and effective. Drawing and techniques are accurate and effective. You can kind of see how the step down in the language works. I'm going to scare you all by showing you the full rubric here. Okay. And I don't know that this can get any larger. But that's kind of what we're looking at doing. Now, one of the things that you have to kind of keep in mind when you're developing rubrics is that you also need to be able to use them. Okay, so if your use of language, you need to specify a little bit less detail, you need to specify more detail. You can make those adjustments to your own rubrics as long as the standards are consistent across the different faculty teaching the class in your department. There are going to be some rubrics. I like to rubric grade with all of my assignments. There's going to be some rubrics for the earlier assignments that may only have 2 or 3 criteria to them. And those criteria may have to do primarily with completeness rather than overall work quality. What you want to stay away from in writing your rubrics is you want to stay away from language like inappropriate or inadequate or shows a lack of talent. Bear in mind who your audience is, okay? You really want to keep your language as objective as possible and not get into subjective decisions about the quality of the students' ideas or the adequacy of their conception of the work in the first place. Really, strive for a kind of a neutral language. Let them see where they've lost points, but don't leave them feeling like there's no improvement that they can show that's going to get them to passing grades at some point. These are meant to support the students while they work. They're meant to facilitate the students making improvements where they need to make those improvements. They really don't need to make the students feel bad about themselves. They are going to do some of that anyways, but be careful with your language. Okay, don't get too personal in the middle of all of that. Okay.
So you ready for me?
Yes, I think so. My screen is unshared. I'm going to check Carol right now.
Okay.
And then, as I said, we will, as Blaine said earlier, we will do Q&A toward the end of things.
Okay. I just wanted to say one thing that before, and I love how this is going, but I would make an argument that for both faculty and students, you might want to say where points are gained, because I think students come across thinking that they are starting with 100 and you are taking them down a peg. And the reality is they're starting at 0 and you're adding it, you're building them up. You would never expect to give them a rubric at the beginning of the quarter and expect that they got an A. You would expect that they would get did not meet expectations because they haven't learned the information yet. So I think that if you start with letting students know that, that will really help them in the future in terms of accepting met expectations as an 80 to an 89, instead of coming to you and saying, well, why don't I have 100, or why don't I have a 99, or whatever. They don't like to lose points. They all think they started at 100. So now to why you want to build your rubric in Canvas. You can take first of all, you can copy and revise them for all future assignments. You can use them for grading, and you can share them with other instructors and classes. And I am going to show you how to do that. Also, I'm going to show you, I have some screenshots here, and I'm going to go through some stuff live, but I wanted to tell you that I am having Kayla do a couple of videos, and we will post them in Instructor Island next week, so that if you want to find a rubric, you can just look at the video and get reminded as to how to do it. A couple of things to know, also how to and why to use percentages in some cases instead of points, how to open an already built rubric, how to rename, revise, and save, and especially naming conventions, and then how to build a rubric from scratch. So to find an existing rubric, when you go into your assignments, and I'll go back into Canvas in a second, under the assignment at the bottom, you don't have to edit the assignment, you just have to click on it. You'll see a button that says plus rubric. Once you do that, you will see this, a little magnifying glass that says find a rubric. And when you click on that, you will see this page. And this is my favorite page to do slowly, so I'll show it to you in a minute. But courses with rubrics, these are all of the courses that you have access to that you will see rubrics in, and it'll show you how many rubrics you have. Now, right now I'm clicked in here, and there are 12 rubrics, and it will show you the name of all of the rubrics, how many criteria, what the points are. So if you're having a problem remembering what you called something, that can be helpful to you to just find based on the number of points for an assignment, for example. And then once you click on it, you'll see a preview of what that looks like here. So this one I imported from Blaine, and this is it. So I know that this is the 50 points possible, and this is the rubric that I would want to use. And at the bottom of this page, I'm going to minimize it all the people because I can't, it keeps blocking me. At the bottom of this page, it will say use this rubric, and you can click on that, and then that will become your rubric. All right, once you have it, you can then revise it, and there are a couple of things that you can do there. So when you are revising a rubric, you click on this pencil, and then if you've borrowed or imported a rubric from either another class, another assignment, or another person, it will want you to rename it because it will say that you're not allowed to edit the current rubric. So what you can do is then just rename your rubric right here. And generally, some best practices are to include the course number, the name of your assignment, or if you use an assignment, say you have different levels of an assignment, you might want to differentiate it based on date. If you change your rubric from, say, fall to winter, maybe add a winter 22 or winter 23, and then that way when you're looking for new rubrics, you'll know, oh, this is my most recent rubric. All right, so I'm going to go back in and show you this one. If you go and you say, well, I don't have a rubric that will work, you can then also build a rubric from scratch. And say you have a Word document, the easiest way to do a rubric from a Word document is to copy and paste into your rubric build. And I'm going to switch over to assignment here. So here we have, this is the same assignment that Blaine is going to use to grade. Here we have a rubric that is already there. And if I wanted to change it, I can change it here. And I can change it, say, July 22. And now when I go to save it, I can then change any of the criteria. I can add, maybe I want to add SLOs to this description. So one, I don't have them here, but you could do that. You could change your point values here, etc. All right, and then this is the important button here, which is use this rubric for assignment grading, which you will need to do in order to actually use the rubric for assignment. If I go back to the other one where I was building a new one. Okay. Same assignment. Now I'm going to add a rubric. Again, you're going to want to title it. This was an IMTD class. I don't remember what it is. I'm going to say 100D and final. Right. Then what you're going to do is type in your description. So this is the layout. 8. This is 10 points. And then this button here, which is the range, is really important because that allows you to customize your values when you're grading. And then you can edit each of these by saying exceeds expectations and typing information here. I go back to you can even copy and paste like this. All right. Then I'm going to add a new one. It's going to be meets expectations. And I'm going to change this to a 9, 8. And when I do that, I'll just show you right now, it will automatically change this one from 10 to 9. And then again, I'm going to add another one here, which is approaches. Expectations. Again, change this to 7. And this one I'm going to say does not meet.
We did it! So fast.
All right.
Let's go back
now, I know I've gone a little bit fast, so let me check in with everybody. Is everybody clear on how I copied that? Raise your hands. Yes. The second thing then you're going to do, and obviously I didn't copy and paste this into here, but this is what you would do. You would just copy it here. You can also, under this layout range on this long description, you can add the different parts of your SLOs and your PLOs to make it very clear what you're actually looking at. Now I have more. What I can do is I can duplicate. So I'm going to have a new criterion and I'm going to duplicate this one. Why would I do it? Because one, I'm going to change it. What is the next one? Perspective. All right, so I'm not filling these in as much as I would, but we have perspective. We would put the additional SLOs here. Okay, right? It's already put in all my points. Now I can just go in and edit, and instead of having to start from scratch, I can copy them. I can then just copy and paste this, and I'm done, right? So this is a way to quickly build a rubric by copying and pasting from. It still will take time. Let me just be clear. These take a little longer than you would expect, but once you get started with one full criterion, you can actually copy them pretty quickly. The other nice thing about this is these are all 10 points. Say I have a new criterion that's less, right? So say I have one that's not 10 points and is only, say I have a couple of criteria that are only 5 points, then I could then copy those other criteria. When I go to make a new criterion, I can copy either one of these and then change it as I go. So as you develop your different criteria, you can actually copy the different ones over from based on the points or how close they are in wording. As you're, maybe you have a criteria that doesn't need 4 levels. You know, if you have a level of your rubric that is submitted, not submitted, right? So that's only 2. You could copy something like that. All right. Okay, so this is where I left off. This is what I was talking about in terms of copying. This is the most important thing, which is to use this for rubric grading. If you do not check this box, it will still show up in your assignment. When you go into SpeedGrader, you will be able to see the rubric. You can even fill it in. It will keep track of the score in the rubric, but it will not change that grade in your grade book. It will just, you will still have to manually enter a grade into the grade book. If you use this, box right here, then when you fill out the rubric in SpeedGrader, it will automatically enter that grade into your grade book. And this was some information, I believe Blaine put this together. Do you want to talk about this now, or do you want me to go forward and you can come back to it?
You go ahead, and this is this is basically notes on my presentation, so come back to that.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll come back to that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I just put this in here. I can move it back. All right. One thing I wanted to comment on is when you are importing or copying an assignment, that box sometimes comes unchecked. So if you import, if you copy a rubric from somebody and you import it to your assignment, that use this rubric from grading box won't be checked automatically. So you have to go in and edit it. When you go in to edit, like I said before, it will want you to resave it as a new name, but you do not need to do that when you're just going in to check that box. You can just ignore that warning, hit the use this rubric for grading box, check it, update it, and then it will use it for grading. And that's true on even if you're importing or using a rubric of your own. So if you copy it from another class or from your previous assignment, it won't automatically be set up to use for grading. The other thing that we had talked about was points versus percentages. All of your assignments need to be submitted or entered as points, but when you display the grade, you have the option to change that to percentages. And I would just say that this is really helpful when you're talking about dealing with rubrics. If your assignment is a very low point value assignment, or if it's a very awkwardly numbered assignment. If you have 17 points for something, students don't necessarily think that 10 points is as bad as a 50% or 60%. So that's one reason why if you change it to percentages, then students will see that as a percentage when we do that rubric. And the final thing I wanted to show you, I'm going to go back to my other.
Is that at the bottom of the assignment page, did you say, Cheryl? The
Yes, yes. I'm going to
percentages?
go into here, right here in this assignment here, where it says points 50. If I go in and edit it, It's kind of slow. I'm using free Wi-Fi at Pinwell. It's not really high speed. Yes, okay, so here it is. 50 points. Right here, I can hit percentage, and that will be save. That way. All right, and then when you do your rubric, it'll still be points, but when students see it, they'll see it in percentages. They'll see the grade as a percentage, and that can help them. The other thing I wanted to do is show you how you can send a rubric. I showed you how you can import a rubric and see one from other courses. But say you have a great rubric, you can take your rubric. How did you do that, Blaine? I can't believe I don't know.
I sent you the assignment,
I know. Oh, you sent me the assignment. Okay,
which
yeah,
you taught
okay,
me
which-
before. I think you tried to send a rubric singly and
Yeah.
it didn't work. So
Yeah, you do have to
that's
send
a
the assignment.
workaround.
Okay.
Cheryl, just really quickly, there's a question in the chat about, is there a button to add this to the grade book, or does that happen automatically?
What do you mean add this to the grade book? So if you're grading,
To add the work you do on the rubric. It all goes straight into the grade book, doesn't it?
if you hit this button, if you hit the button that says use this rubric for grading, let me
Okay.
show you. Here's Blaine's going to do this more, but if you go to Speed Grader, you can see the rubric here. I'm going to let him talk about this, but when you put this in, it'll do this, it'll do this. I can make this bigger. By the way, this is adjustable if you want to move it over. That I'm going to not save this. Now, if I save it, if I've set it up to, which I don't think I did, you see it's not showing up as part of the grade. That means that it's not being used. But if you hit that button of use this for gradebook, then those points will get added to the gradebook automatically. So that's why that one button of use this rubric for grading is so important. Even if you don't. Sorry?
There's another question about adding comments.
To the rubric?
On the whole assignment or on each of the criteria individually? Go all the way over to the right.
Right. You can do them individually here to one particular part. You can also do comments at the end of the rubric. And you can also add overall assignments, actually you can do the comments on individual parts, and then you can do comments for the entire assignment at the bottom. But what you can do in terms of sending this button right here, this 3-dot menu, I've tried to tell people about this before. I showed, you can copy this to a class and it'll send the rubric with it, or you can copy it to a person and it'll show up. You can see it here in my profile, something I sent myself. Yesterday there were 2 because Blaine sent one to me. So if I send this and I type in, I'll show you the assignment. Right? It'll send it to her and she'll get it in her file box, the whole assignment, as well as the rubric. And then once you've got that rubric, you don't have to use the assignment, you can just use the rubric. Or I can copy it to the class, which is how I got it. I said new training. And when you send it to a class, if it's another class of yours, you can actually even choose which module you want to put it in, right? Maybe I want to put it in week 10. And it'll tell you where in the module. You can do this for almost anything in Canvas. You can do it for assignments. You can do it for tests, quizzes, pages. But right now we're talking about this. So, and then when I go back here, and I go back into my modules, you'll see module 10. Here it is, right here. Okay, I think that was it for me. Did I answer all
Great.
their questions, Blaine?
Thank you, Cheryl. That's amazing. I don't want to spend too much more time because I really want to get to people's questions.
Carol, if you unshare your screen.
Yep, I'm going to. Yeah, there, he got it.
Carol, if you can also mute yourself. Thank you.
So when you go into your dashboard, all of you, I'm hoping, I realize I haven't actually introduced myself. My name is Blaine. I believe most of you know me, but I'm a teacher like you, so I have had some success and some struggles with these rubrics as well. So I just wanted to sort of take it from where Cheryl left off, and what she's taught me to do with it then is to, this is the course here. I look over here in the right side of my Canvas and it says that I have things to grade here, that students have submitted things. So I can just click on that and it'll take me right to the assignment that I want to grade. I also can go through the home page and all that kind of thing and look at my different assignments if I want. One thing that Cheryl mentioned was setting up the button that makes it automatically score the grades in your Canvas. That's a really great thing for me. Some teachers don't like to do that, and that's because they don't want the students to see the grade. You can go here into your settings. So whenever I start a new class, I always make sure that my grade posting is manual. And that way I can grade rubrics, and I can go through the entire class and get them all lined up, get my ducks in a row before I go to this point here and post all the grades. That's sort of like my satisfying little like, yay, you know, like the confetti thing comes out when I'm done or whatever. And that way I can grade half the class on one night and the rest of the class in the morning. And I don't run into that thing where, you know, I find out I was inflating grades because I was tired or something like that, or deflating them because I was tired would be more like it, right? So I have several different types of rubrics. The main thing I would say is that you want to have a rubric, of course, on your final, but there are little rubrics that I have inside of other assignments. So there's very simplified rubrics that I have just because I think sometimes students, for instance, want to know why they're getting a point knocked off in a discussion, for instance. And discussions is where I grade for, I have a discussion every week for my class, and that makes it so that students can upload things and discuss things here, but it also makes it so that if I make that a graded discussion, you'll notice this is a graded discussion with 3 points possible. I can have a speed grader and a rubric in there that will help them to know what I'm grading them on. And this is really helpful because a lot of times I think students forget that they're not being graded on whether they attend or not. So I've put things here like contributed to conversation, verbally and visibly, visually, they brought homework, they use design terms, they have respect for the models. This would be for a modeling or for a figure drawing class. Proper cell phone etiquette, things like that. So that if they get a point knocked off, I can tell them. I also have to be careful if I'm only putting 3 points on an assignment, because if I take a point off for them being 5 or 10 minutes or even 15 minutes late, there's 3 hours in class that they've participated in. And if I knock them down to a B, let's say, or I knock a full point off for something, I'm actually giving them a D on that, so that if I were to go back to that rubric and put a percentage on there, I would see that I'm giving the student a D, even though I only took 1 point off. So my first suggestion is to think in percentages, to make sure that whenever you are making a rubric or something, that you have some kind of a scoring guide. So this is a scoring guide that I made because these are the kind of points that I use for that 3 point that I give for participation, for instance. I know that when I drop down to a 2.5 from a 275, I'm not going from an A- to a B+, I'm dropping into a B, where a 2.25 is dropping me to a C. So I've kind of lined these things up for a 5 point, a 10 point, a 20 point. This is something that I use all the time because I'll have a rubric that has maybe 100 points possible, but 25 of them are for, as you've seen, are for perspective drawing, or 30 of them are for gesture. In my figure drawing classes, they go a little bit differently. This rubric that we've seen today, I made very simple by making everything 10 points. It's great to make everything easily divisible, so that if you can do that, then you'll see the reason that I like this rubric here is because I have 10 points for everything, and I can pretty much know that a 9 is a B, and an 8 is a B, and a 7 is a C, and a 6 is a D, and 5 and below is failing, basically. It was interesting, Cheryl said, they're starting from 0 and moving forward. You have to decide, and usually I think of it this way: if they handed anything in, they get half the credit. I kind of start them at 5 and move them forward from that. I use 5 out of 10, basically, right at 50%, I should say. So if I'm giving them a 3 or a 2 or something over here, it means they've handed a page in with lines on it, but it hasn't really shown any knowledge or anything that I was looking for. And so the 6 to a 7 is what I use for the students that are really struggling but are still handing in work. What else? Let's see, do I have on here? You can toggle on an assignment the I'm going to leave comments box, but that's actually, I find, not a really great thing to do. If you come here to your rubric and you go to edit it and you say, I can't edit it, and then I'm going to change it, that's fine. I'm just going to change here and say, I'm going to write freeform comments. That's not a great thing to do, because what happens when you do that is you've erased all of your work. All they see is that they're being graded on something and the points that they're getting. So I would do the comments the way that Cheryl suggested, which is to leave this box unchecked so that they're going to see all the parameters. Now I'm waiting for my computer to catch up. I don't know if my voice and screen are freezing on you, but I want to change this back. That'll teach me to click around. Oh, there it is. I gotta have to say it.
In that, yeah, there you go.
Sorry, my Zoom thing was over top of that message. So here I can edit it and say I'm not going to write freeform comments, but as we know, as Cheryl just showed us, you can also unclick this, use this rubric for assignment grading. But then if you do that, what's going to happen is the points will be in the rubric, but you're going to have to, when you go to your speed grader, basically fill out the rubric and then also put the points up above the rubric. So where this says grade out of 50, I might fill out the whole rubric here and click save. And then I can put comments in here. In fact, I've saved some comments from prior things. The other thing that I wanted to say, just touch briefly, because we're getting right to the end here, is that I always keep track of if I'm writing things quite a lot so that I can go back and update my rubrics. If I find that I'm constantly typing comments over and over and over again, like a lot of the students are forgetting that they have colored pencils and they're not using colored pencils with their markers, for instance, then I will go and I will change the rubric. Now, I don't ever do that as I'm grading. I want to do that for the next quarter. So I'm sort of just making notes for that because I want them to have the rubric early on, which kind of brings me to the question, the conversation that Chana Messer and I were having about how to get them to see the rubric and know the rubric is there and read the rubric. And I saw somebody said something really helpful about giving them a rubric and having them grade each other from the rubric. I thought that's a really great idea. Even if you give them a very simplified rubric or something like that, having them look at each other's work and give each other comments, have them write them down and look at that too, and then help them. I don't know, I'm always harassing them because they'll say, you know, it's pretty, it's nice, I really love it. And I'm like, okay, so that's your gut. Now the next level is your thinker. So what do you like about it? What is it that makes it good? And then the next level would be design language, right? So how can you get a few of these words like, you know, value range, color, contrast, things like that into your thing. And then I would say the final would be solution-based. So I ask a student how they might change it if they were to take this home and work on it some more. It's one way to help them learn to speak to each other in terms that are not loaded and that are more neutral, as Lisa was teaching us at the beginning, and also to get them to think clearly and to use the design terms and things like that. I have, what do I have here? A few other things. We mentioned half the points are failing, the scoring guide. You can weight groups, as you know. Cheryl can help you learn about that. If you haven't weighted your assignments, then that's a good thing to do too, so that you can then make every assignment worth 10 points, but you can make the sketchbook worth a little bit less and the final worth a little bit more and things like that. So those are the main things that I wanted to mention. I'm trying to wrap up really early because it's already 12:57. So looks like we have a lot to talk about. Who's been reading comments, or who wants to raise their hand or unmute themselves and ask a question at this point? What's coming up for you guys? How can we be helpful to you, or what would you like to discuss with Lisa and Cheryl?
I'm just going to mention one of the things I've done. I taught the short story class a couple of times. One of the things I did, the final assignment, was to write their own short stories. So we worked on the rubric together. Okay, we worked on what are the things that, what does a short story need? What makes a good, you know, what is a marker of quality in this area and that area and all these other areas. And I actually asked them to develop a couple of criteria as a class that their work would then be evaluated against. And so that was interesting because it kind of got into the whole idea of the rubric of what needs to be there and what quality does it need to be, you know, which kind of gets them away from the I am inspired by nature because it is beautiful sorts of statements.
Right. I always like to imagine a student coming to me and asking, why did I get a B? Or what can I do to get an A? That's a really great question. And it's something that, you know, I hadn't really answered, for instance, before I made that attendance rubric, right? Like, why am I getting points off for attendance? Or what do I have to do for you to get an A? Like sometimes a student has asked me that boldly. And I love that they do that, because it's kind of like, well, I question myself, why would I give someone a C? Why would I fail someone in a class, right? So that clarity is really what we're looking for. Shauna, I see your hand up. Go ahead and unmute
Yeah,
yourself.
okay. It is Hannah, by the way, but it's okay.
Oh, Hannah, thank you.
It's fine. It's fine. Everybody calls me Chana and I answer. But I have a question, like if they're looking, because I teach it's more like software class. So I get students from all over. So not necessarily they are going to be designers. So their design skill is different than graphic design. So I have to grade them based on the knowledge of the software more or less. But what would you do if, like, let's say I'm grading the project, let's say project 1, and they're not getting the complete thing, and then they text me or write to me over Canvas to say, can I resubmit it? I am actually a good one and I let them resubmit. What do you take on that? Because I feel like I want them to know the software and I want them to go over it again if they failed in something. So what is your take about that? It's a question.
Well, Lisa, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the department head is the person to talk to about that. There are some department heads that try to put some parameters across the department. Usually in department head meetings, we've had discussions with other teachers, but in general, teachers have a lot of autonomy in terms of whether they accept late work or not. And that's part of your syllabus contract. So you're going to make sure that's talked about on the first day of your class. Let your students know and make it clear.
We see a lot of projects where they've either scaffolded the project in that the student turns in pieces and gets feedback on at a couple of different points. In some cases, we're getting faculty that they'll have the project turned in and they invite resubmissions based on comments. And what we're doing with that is encouraging people to, if they do invite a resubmission based on comments, including has the student incorporated comments into the revised work, because that capacity to make use of feedback is very much a professional skill. And so getting them to think about their work on that level, it's not just, you're going to get an A if you do this. It's, did you take advantage of this feedback opportunity you got? So all of it is designed to help the students learn. And I think that decision about whether students can resubmit work for feedback and resubmission, I think that that's very much a departmental decision. It is also very much a faculty decision. It has to do with how you structure your work. And on what circumstances if you don't really like doing it that way, under what circumstances will you invite resubmissions? I think the only guideline is you got to be clear, and you got to be clear in advance, because it needs to be applied. If you're giving everybody an opportunity to resubmit, give everybody an opportunity to resubmit. Don't just reserve that opportunity for this student or that student or the other student.
Yeah. Well, I know a little bit more now from the workbook now, because I went, yeah.
I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I believe, Isabel, we're supposed to end on the hour. Is that right? Okay, so you get full credit and full payment if you have been here, and we thank you for your attendance, and we totally appreciate all of your hard work. You all are stars, and I'll put this rubric that I have into the share site, and all of you can put rubrics in as well and share with each other if you want. Ask each other for rubrics. I'm super grateful to be at an institution where teachers are so willing to share information and to give to each other the things that they have built. It's really saved me. It's taught me how to teach. And so share and make sure that you get a hold of Cheryl or Lisa if you have any questions. If you have questions about this presentation, feel free to send an email to Isabel or me, and we'll get you links to this or anything else that we can help you with. We're really here to help you, and we appreciate all the help that you give to us. Anyone that wants to stay on for a little while, I have a few minutes, or I have more time. I'm okay to stay on and chat with all of you, but we want to give a big appreciation to all of you who showed up, and to Cheryl and Lisa for making today happen, and for making our rubrics happen, and making our Canvas happen, and all you do at FIDM to keep us going. So we appreciate you very much, and want to thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
Hannah, I cut you off. Did you have something else you were saying?
No, I just said thank you.